Alrighty, folks, what's going on? So it's been a while since I've done any type of content. It's been really busy with life and stuff. So this particular video was one that I did come across, and it's a short video, but I did find the title interesting. It just says, "I'm done with Windows," and he very much doesn't show a Mac. So there's only one other option, really. Sorry, FreeBSD fans. So I want to see what homeboy here has to say after saying he's done with Windows. Now, I don't know how old this video is. I haven't looked at really any of the information for it. This is just gut reaction. Saw the title, just clicked on it, and here we are, me recording. So let's roll into it and see what homie has to say.
For the past few months, so I've been toying around with the idea of switching my main gaming PC over to a Linux gaming PC and just leaving Windows behind forever. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because Windows 11 is just not something I want to switch to. And honestly, Linux to me is just the next viable option. Now, the reason why I have both of these PCs here on top of this table is I had a completely different idea for this video, and honestly, it just went south. What I did was I took my RX 580 out of here and put it into my main PC, and took the GTX 1080 out of here and put it into my son's PC. Now, while his is getting great performance, mine with the RX 580 is not getting that good of performance, or as much performance as I would like. Now, the reason behind that is AMD GPUs tend to work better on Linux than NVIDIA GPUs historically. But since then, since I switched them over and started doing some benchmarks so I can compare games in Windows and in Linux, I have found out and done a little research and found out that my GPU, my GTX 1080, would be just fine in Linux. And my overall consensus with it of using the GTX 1080 inside of Linux for a little while, before I actually started making this channel, I was using Linux, I had zero issues with it. So with that research, I've decided to go back to my GTX 1080 inside of my main PC and take the risk of using those proprietary NVIDIA drivers. Now, I have no issues using proprietary drivers in my Linux PCs, as some people do with the free and open source community. I take no issue at all with using proprietary drivers, depending on what they are. Now, graphics drivers, okay, that's fine. But certain other programs, I'm not going to be using those in my Linux gaming PC at all. So I figured while I'm doing some work and swapping out these GPUs, I'd make a video on why I decided to switch to Linux to be.
So I do have one question. Are you using the, it does beg the question, Linux distro. It also begs the question, kernel. And are you using the proprietary AMD drivers? If generically, now some of the older stuff like the 580 and stuff, generically, you'll be fine with not the most recent Mesa and not the most recent kernel. Now, again, I have no idea what you're running as far as like OS, Linux OS specifically. So the 1080, yeah, it's perfectly fine. I have a 3060 RTX that I use in my system. I have a 3050 RTX 3050 Ti system that I use. And I have a Quadro M3000M system. Besides that, though, it really does boil down to those three things. If you're using the proprietary drivers for anything related to AMD and gaming, don't. Stop it. Bad. Don't use them. The open source stuff is more than adequate for it. So I would caveat any experiences based on those, but again, I don't know. So I'm hoping maybe you'll explain that a little bit further in the video.
Begin with. Now, my main concern is that Windows 11 honestly sucks. I do not want to use Windows 11. I don't like the performance metrics I'm seeing about it. I do not want to stick with another proprietary OS that just bottlenecks everything and just wants you to do one thing their way and the only way. I kind of want the option of the choice to do what I want with my PC and actually own my PC instead of my.
And that right there is what you're going to find more and more as the power of Linux and whatnot is I want the PC to be personal again. And you'll find that Linux definitely does do that. Has its caveats like everything else, but it brings that back, that personal nature to computers as a whole. It doesn't matter if it's Mac, Windows, Linux, hardware wise. So I definitely get where you're coming from with that. And yeah, don't even get me started on Windows 11. Yikes.
My PC owning me, or Microsoft owning my PC. That's the big fundamental idea behind it, since Linux is free and open source. Free as in freedom, and free as in money as well. So I've decided, that didn't sound good, so I've decided to switch my main PC, my main rig, over to Linux for that reason. I'm just not a fan of Windows to begin with. I'm not a fan of the random shutdowns and startups and just all the forced updates that they want you to do. But the thing with Linux is you have the freedom of choice. You actually have the freedom to update your system if you want to, or just leave it the way it is. If everything's working fine, just leave it there. Don't touch it. It's perfect. And that's what I like about Linux. I remember myself back in the early 90s, mid 90s, when I had my Commodore 64 and I was learning to use BASIC for the first time. That's what I feel like when I use Linux. It just brings me back to those days. And honestly, I like computing for computing. I like computing for gaming as well. Like, I like that, but I like to be able to tinker and mess around with things and make things my own. That's what the whole thing with me is. I like to make things my own. And Linux just allows me to do that. TPM is kind of annoying with Windows 11 and the need for it, and I'm not a big fan of that. So I've decided to switch over to Linux completely. And honestly,
so for those that don't know, TPM or TPM 2.0 is trusted, I believe it's trusted platform module. It's a security feature that you can hit or miss on that one. I don't think it's going to have as big of significance as UEFI did or does as far as that requirement. I think Microsoft has shot themselves in the foot. Like, I have a board from 2019 that doesn't have TPM 2.0, and I can't actually upgrade to Windows 11. So guess what I did with that? Windows 10 became Garuda Linux. So yeah, TPM is I'm going to say, currently in its current iteration, it's a bane of most technology enthusiasts' existence as far as it relates to putting Windows on anything that's not officially supported.
I couldn't be happier. I am dying to see what the game performance is between Windows and Linux, and I just hope that with Linux I get a little bit better game performance, as many people have touted in the past before. Now, I'm going to be looking at different distros. I might stick with the Arch distro, mostly because of my peripherals that I have. Rather, I have my Logitech G920 keyboard, I have my Corsair Scimitar Pro mouse that I like to use, and other peripherals like maybe some VR headsets and stuff like that may not work too well in other Linux distributions like a Debian-based distro like Ubuntu or Pop! OS, even though Pop! OS, it might actually work. But needless to say, I'm going to be documenting every little bit of this journey, and it's going to be my Linux gaming journey, and I hope you guys actually really do enjoy this, and hopefully maybe follow along with me as we explore this together. So I'm probably going to be distro hopping for a little bit, just get my feet wet back in Linux and just get used to Linux as a whole operating system once again, and just discover it all over again. It's going to be a fun, exciting thing that I'm planning on doing that I would.
So distro hopping, cool. Treat every Linux distro as a different OS. So you obviously do have knowledge in a lot of the Linux stuff. Pop! OS is an example, Arch based is Debian based. So like you have your understanding of Linux distros, which is extremely helpful in understanding what direction to go. Keep that open mind is the only thing I'm going to say. Once you lose that mindset of being open and willing to explore things and be like, okay, whatever. My other piece of advice, do not try to make a distro fit the machine, or the machine, basically square with a square. Find the best distro for the machine. Don't sit there and bash your head off a wall trying to fight to get a distro, your specific distro, to work. If it doesn't work, just jump to another one, go to another one. It's not the best advice sometimes, but sometimes it's actually is the best advice, unfortunately. It could be a simple implementation, it could be, GCC, take your pick. It could be a myriad of issues, because every Linux distro, barring some, shall we say, swaps and wallpapers, most major Linux distros are going to be far different from each other, even if they're based on similar things. You know, they can include different libraries and all the other stuff. So keep that willingness to jump from various distros, etc., in the forefront of your mind. The exploration matters. Again, find the OS that fits the machine. Don't make the machine try to fit the OS. You know, square, square, round hole kind of deal.
Would like to do, and I cannot wait to bring you guys along on this journey. So as I go ahead and button up our PCs, the swap has been complete. GPUs are now in their respective systems again. And the only caveat to this whole thing is this system is going to be staying a Windows system as I work out all the little kinks and the little nuances of Linux and seeing what works, what hardware is compatible, what's not compatible, what I have to do differently in order to get that stuff working on my main Linux PC, since I will not be going back to Windows on this PC at all. So this one's going to stay Windows just for the growing pains and all that stuff. But this is only the beginning of our Linux gaming journey together. Both GPUs have been swapped out, with the GTX 1080 being inside of our main Linux gaming rig, paired with a 3800X and 32 gigs of RAM inside of this lovely Corsair 5000D Airflow case. I love this case, guys. If you go in the market for a new case, 5000D. Best case I've ever built in. Hands down. Part 2 of this series is going to be coming out relatively soon. And it's going to be all about picking the correct Linux distribution for your use case, which for us is going to be, of course, Linux gaming. So if there's any distribution you guys would like me to check out, sound off down in the comment section below. I'd be glad to check them out, test them out, and maybe even use your suggestions inside of my gaming PC.
Okay, so 2 things that I want to mention. You mentioned Logitech and Corsair, specific, very specific things. So depending on what you're looking at, you're going to want things like Piper, Polychromatic, keyboard visualizer if you want to go that far, as certain applications to download. OpenRGB is another one. So those will allow you to control certain aspects of your mouse and, you know, color controls and all that stuff, if they're not based on the firmware on the board, like piece of hardware itself. I would recommend going green with Envy on NVIDIA specifically. If you do end up sticking another AMD GPU in there, I would recommend Core Control. So those are just some quick recommendations. Definitely Steam native, Heroic Games Launcher will take care of your GOG and all the other stuff, GOG and all the Epic stuff. Windtrix, Proton GE, all that stuff really doesn't matter. Lutris, if you want to venture outside that realm of stuff, that's your prerogative. I'm not a fan personally. Game mode is a nice little thing to have, and DXVK, you know, so you can actually put reasons to use Linux. GoVerlay or Mango HUD, which is the thing that you see for a lot of the Steam Deck videos, is another one. So if you want to do your benchmarking and all that jazz. So yeah, those are just some quick recommendations that I'm going to throw your way. Interesting to see where this goes. Hope the experience is fun, at least, even if it doesn't be successful for you. So let's see where this goes. And with that, what's your guys' experience switching to Linux as a gaming system? Is it good? Is it bad? Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. I really don't have anything to yell and scream about. So for those that are expecting it, well, hate to break it to you, you ain't getting it on this video. This video is more done out of curiosity. So you guys know what to do. Comment, rate, subscribe, all that fun jazz. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.